Hi everyone, Ollie here. Welcome back to the channel. If you recall, in one of my last videos, I mentioned wanting to do a few more reflective videos about how the year has gone and what I can learn from going through first year and going through the exams in particular. So if you haven't seen my first video on the 5 things I loved from my first year of grad entry medicine, go and check that video out. It will be linked in the description down below. But this one is going to be looking at things that I can do differently, things I can improve on, things that are going to have to change with the way I do things now that I'm through my preclinical part of the program. So this first one is not really a life lesson so much as an opportunity, but it's expanded content here on the channel. Now that the terrors and the demands of my preclinical year are out the way, I should, at least in theory, have a little bit more time to pursue other things. And that will play into this video more, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of what that means for the channel, I really want to diversify my content. So this will, fingers crossed, this will include content such as a podcast that I'm really excited. We're getting towards the stages where that might be ready. An ambition is I want to have a full set of OSCE walkthrough videos and performances as well. Intended for the first years at Warwick, just to add to all the amazing OSCE content that's provided by the university and places like Geeky Medics. I want to do more student interviews. That's something I really regretted not being able to do due to time demands, was interviewing students about their time, and more anatomy and physiology tutorials as well. I really love teaching, and I think this platform provides a really valuable opportunity to be able to do that more. So the second thing I want to talk about is societies. And due to the time restrictions of the last year, I did struggle to engage with societies as much as I would have liked. But I've said before that societies were a huge part of my undergraduate course at Newcastle, and I would really like it if they could be here as well. I'm part of a couple of committees within the med school already, and I do want to potentially join a couple of others on the main campus just to make sure my calendar is always full and I can keep myself busy, so I'm making the most of my time here. Third item on this list is embracing more clinical opportunities. And I think going into second year, making it past the preclinical part of the course is something that we've all been looking forward to some level since day one. We'll feel like proper medical students. There'll be the chance to really get stuck in and start learning how to doctor, basically. And the majority of our time, particularly after Christmas, will be spent on the ward because we are considered ward safe, supposedly. So that means that the emphasis is going to start being placed on more clinical exposure, and getting as much time and opportunity there is going to be key. Now, unfortunately for me, while in the first year I was presented with a ton of really valuable or potentially valuable clinical opportunities by staff or friends or whatever, I wasn't able to make the most of them or even take them up in many cases, just because my time had to be spent learning the core science. Pretty much in the time running up to Easter, so that was sort of end of February into March, from then on I was basically so stressed about the exams I didn't want to spend much time doing much else. But because my next set of exams isn't until September 2019, more than a year away, it means I should, at least in theory, have more time to make the most of those opportunities when they come up. The fourth thing I want to tackle is being able to study more effectively and do less but more consistently. Because as I sort of just indicated, I started studying properly for my summer exams at around about when we broke up for the Easter holidays, and that point when we broke up, that marks 10 weeks in the first year between when your Easter holiday starts and when you sit your exams. And that does sound like a long time. I never would have spent 10 weeks preparing for my undergrad university exams, but considering the amount I had to do, the amount most of us had to do, I had to make brand new notes from scratch, had to make mnemonics, do the diagrams. 10 weeks isn't a crazy long time when you're starting again. So instead of that, what I'm going to try and do this year is make it to as many lectures as I can. In the first year, I actually stopped going in Block 5. Moment of honesty, I actually stopped going to lectures in Block 5 for everything that wasn't anatomy, because I figured I'd just be able to deal with it. But I'm going to try and not do that this year, try and get to everything and make sure that I'm doing all my written notes on the day if possible. And if I haven't done things by the end of the week, making sure that I spend at least one day of the weekend making sure my notes are up to date. And the other part of this is going to be sticking to a list of learning objectives, because I think there are essentially 2 ways of tackling the first year at Warwick Medical School. You are given a very long list, the complete set of learning objectives that we're expected to know by the end of the first year, and they cover all the things we could be asked about. I didn't do it that way because I think the other way you can do it is use the lecture content, because if it's not in a lecture or a bit of guided learning material, they in theory can't ask you about it. So what I did was use the lecture material, all the directed material that we were given instead of the objective list, and that worked fine. I think both of those ways are perfectly okay for the first year. However, in second year, it's not lecture based, it's an objective list, a list of clinical signs and symptoms and conditions and techniques and things that you're supposed to know. It's just a big long checklist, and it's up to you to go into that material as much or as little as you want until you feel you've satisfied the checklist. So instead of being able to use the given lecture material as a concrete reference, which was what I did in the first year, I won't be able to do that, and I'll have to adapt to this new system. And I'm looking forward to it, but that will present a new challenge in and of itself. And the last really big thing that I want to talk about is the ability to know my own limit. As I've said before in this video, I'm one of those people that, for better or worse, likes to be working all the time, and that's not... I used to think that was a good thing. I've talked about this before. I would fetishize this idea of being able to work yourself into the ground until you inevitably burn out. And just from having been through that cycle quite a few times now, it's just not healthy. So what I need to become better at is learning when it's time to stop, because this year, with the amount the demand placed on us by the amount of content there was to cover, I've had to become much better at managing my time effectively and planning further ahead to make sure I'm using my time properly. And it's just about being realistic with what I expect myself to be able to do as well. The hallmark event that stood out for me this year has been right at the start of the year. I applied for a kind of sub-editor position with the Boar, which is the student newspaper at Warwick, because I'd done the student paper the last 2 years of my Newcastle degree. I'd really enjoyed it. I really wanted to do it again. So I went through the application process. It was fine. I really enjoyed it, but there were a few hoops to jump through, and was offered the position, which was obviously wonderful. I took it happily, and it was less than 2 weeks later I had to resign. So to Amy, the science editor at the time, I'm sorry for being a dick, because I had to put Amy through that whole process only to give up the position almost immediately. But it was just because I realised that alongside the course, it just wasn't viable for me. The demands of the course were way more than what I was expecting. I don't know what I expected, but not having been in medicine before, I don't think that I really could have had the impression, until you've done it yourself, of the sort of time that you'll have to put in, particularly because everyone will do things in their own different ways. So until you've actually tried it, it's difficult to know what you can and can't do. So essentially, I'm hoping to go into second year with a much more realistic perspective of what I feel I'm able to do, and to be able to manage my time sensibly such that I'm meeting the demands of the course while being able to have a rich kind of extracurricular life as well. And that's where I'm going to wrap up this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please be sure to hit that like button for me if you can, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and go and check out my website postgradmedic.com for a bunch of free interview tips, my blogs on daily medical school life here, and you can use the contact form on the website to ask me any questions you want or arrange a mock interview. I'm happy to help, whatever you need. Take care, and I'll see you around. Bye-bye.